People laughed the moment the rusty old plane appeared at the small town auction. The sound of laughter rolled across the open field like careless noise. The plane stood alone under the bright sun, its body covered in faded paint and brown marks of age. One wing looked weaker than the other, and the engine seemed silent and tired. Many people shook their heads and whispered jokes as they walked past it. To them, the plane looked useless. To them, it was nothing more than a mistake from the past. Near the back of the crowd stood a woman named Maya. She was calm and quiet. She did not join the laughter. Her eyes stayed fixed on the plane. She noticed the small details others ignored. The shape of the wings. The strength still present in the metal. The care that had once been given to it. In her hand, Maya held a folded letter. The paper was old and soft from being read many times. The words inside had changed her life. Every time she read them, she felt the same pull toward this moment. The auctioneer cleared his throat and began speaking. He listed the plane's age and its lack of recent use. He warned the crowd that the plane had not flown in many years. His voice suggested doubt. His words pushed people further away. No one raised a hand. The auctioneer paused, surprised by the silence. He tried again, lowering the price. Still no one bid. A man in the front laughed and said the plane was only good for scrap. Another joked that it would never leave the ground again. Then Maya lifted her hand. The crowd turned all at once. Laughter faded into confused murmurs. Some people stared at her as if she had misunderstood the situation. The auctioneer pointed at her, asking if she was sure. Maya nodded. The bid was accepted. No one else joined in. The gavel came down, and just like that, the rusty old plane belonged to her. As people walked away, their laughter returned. A few shook their heads. One woman whispered that Maya must be desperate. A man said she had no idea what she had done. Maya heard them but did not react. Her focus stayed on the plane. Later that afternoon, she returned with a mechanic named Omar. He was not a loud man. He did not rush. He walked slowly around the plane, studying it with respect. His fingers ran along the metal as if reading a story written in rust and time. "This plane has a history," Omar said quietly. "Yes," Maya replied. "That is why I bought it." They climbed into the cockpit. Dust covered the seats and controls, but the structure was strong. Near the pilot's seat, a name was carved carefully into the surface. Sam. Maya's breath slowed when she saw it. Her fingers traced the letters gently. Omar noticed her reaction but said nothing. That evening, Maya returned to her small rented room. She sat at the table and unfolded the letter once more. The words inside were written by Sam, a pilot whose name had slowly faded from memory. The letter spoke of open skies and long flights. It spoke of responsibility and care. Sam had written about the plane like it was a living partner, not a machine. He trusted it with his life, and it had trusted him in return. But the letter also spoke of loss. Of one flight that changed everything. A flight that saved lives on the ground but ended Sam's career in the sky. People praised the result but blamed the pilot. The story spread without the truth. Sam disappeared from public view, carrying the weight alone. Maya folded the letter and looked out the window. She had never met Sam, but his story had reached her through a friend of a friend. It stayed with her. It refused to be forgotten. The next morning, Maya returned to the hangar early. Omar was already there. Together, they began the slow work of cleaning. Rust was brushed away. Old panels were removed carefully. Each hour revealed more of the plane's original strength. People began to stop and watch. Some were curious. Some were doubtful. The same people who laughed before now whispered questions. Why would anyone spend time on such an old plane? Why not buy something newer? Maya kept working. As days passed, the plane began to change. The rust faded. The metal shone again. The engine was examined piece by piece. Omar smiled more often. He said the plane was stronger than it looked. One afternoon, an older man approached. His name was Leo. He stared at the plane for a long time before speaking. "I flew with Sam," he said. Maya looked up, surprised. "He was the best pilot I ever knew," Leo continued. "What happened was not his fault." But no one wanted to hear that. Maya listened carefully. Leo's voice carried regret. He told her how Sam made a choice in the air that saved people below. How the plane was damaged but still landed safely. How the story was twisted afterward. "That plane carried him home," Leo said. "Just like it always did." Maya felt the weight of the moment. She understood now why this plane mattered. It was not about flying again. It was about truth. By the end of the week, the laughter was gone. The crowd now watched in silence. The rusty old plane no longer looked forgotten. It looked respected. And Maya knew this was only the beginning. The next week began with quiet mornings and long hours at the hangar. Maya arrived early every day. The sun was often just rising, painting the sky with soft colors as she unlocked the door. The plane stood inside like a patient waiting for care. Each day, it looked a little stronger. Omar worked beside her with steady focus. He cleaned parts carefully and checked systems one by one. He spoke less than most mechanics, but when he did, his words mattered. "This plane was built with care," he said one morning. "Someone loved it." Maya nodded. Sam did. Word about the restoration spread through the town. People who once laughed now stopped by to watch. Some asked questions. Others only observed in silence. The mood around the hangar had changed. There was curiosity instead of mockery. One afternoon, a young student named Ian came by. He loved planes and dreamed of flying one day. He watched Maya work and finally gathered the courage to speak. "Why this plane?" he asked. "Why not a newer one?" Maya wiped her hands and looked at him. "Because stories matter," she said. "And some stories deserve another chance." Ian nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of her words. Later that day, Leo returned. He carried a small box under his arm. He placed it gently on the table inside the hangar. "These are Sam's flight logs," Leo said. "I kept them safe." Maya opened the box slowly. Inside were notebooks filled with neat handwriting. Dates, weather notes, flight paths, and small personal thoughts lined the pages. Sam had written about fear and confidence, about responsibility, and about the trust between a pilot and a plane. One entry stood out. It described the final flight. Sam had noticed trouble early. He could have turned away, but people were below. He chose a harder path to protect them. The plane had taken damage, but it did not fail him. Maya closed the notebook carefully. "People need to read this," she said. Leo sighed. "I tried to tell them once. No one listened." Maya looked at the plane again. "They will now." As the days passed, the engine was cleaned and tested. Omar's smile grew wider with each successful check. He said the plane still had life left in it. One morning, a local reporter named Nina arrived. She had heard whispers about the old plane and the woman restoring it. She asked Maya if she could write a story. Maya agreed on one condition. "Tell the truth," she said. Nina listened carefully as Maya shared Sam's story. She read parts of the flight logs. She spoke with Leo. She watched Omar work. The story changed as she learned more. It was no longer about a foolish purchase. It was about respect and courage. The article was published a few days later. People across the town read it. Some felt regret. Others felt surprise. Many felt silence where laughter once lived. Messages began to arrive. Old pilots, mechanics, even families who remembered the day of Sam's final flight. They shared memories and support. The hangar became a place of quiet reflection. One evening, Maya stayed late alone. The lights were low. She sat inside the cockpit and placed her hands on the controls. She imagined Sam sitting there, focused and calm. "You did the right thing," she whispered. Outside, rain began to fall softly. The sound was gentle against the roof. Maya felt a sense of peace she had not felt in a long time. The next day brought a new challenge. Omar called Maya early. "There is one part we may struggle to find," he said. "It is old and rare." Maya did not hesitate. "We will find it." She searched online and called distant workshops. She spoke to collectors and museums. Many said no. Some did not respond. But she kept trying. Finally, a reply came from a retired engineer named Hassan. He owned the part and remembered working on planes like this one years ago. "I will give it to you," Hassan said, "for the plane and the story." When the part arrived, Omar installed it carefully. The engine test that followed was smooth and strong. The sound filled the hangar with energy. People gathered outside, listening. For the first time in years, the plane sounded alive. Maya stepped back, feeling tears in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from release. The plane was no longer silent. Neither was Sam's story. As the sun set that evening, Maya stood beside the plane with Omar and Leo. None of them spoke for a long moment. "This is bigger than I expected," Leo said quietly. Maya nodded. "It always was." The town no longer laughed. It watched with respect. And somewhere between the metal and the memories, a forgotten pilot was being heard again. Spring arrived slowly in the town, bringing soft sunlight and warm breezes. The hangar became brighter as Maya and Omar continued their work on the old plane. Each day, the plane looked closer to flying again. Its wings were polished, the cockpit cleaned, and the engine repaired with care. Maya spent hours inside, studying the controls and imagining the flight Sam had taken years ago. She could almost feel the wind through the cabin and the hum of the engine as it moved through the sky. Omar worked steadily beside her. He had repaired many machines, but he admitted that this plane was different. "It has a spirit," he said one morning. Maya smiled. She understood exactly what he meant. The plane was more than metal and wires. It carried the history of Sam, of the flights he had risked for others, and of the courage people often overlooked. The news of Maya's project spread further. Students, pilots, and even old mechanics visited the hangar. They asked questions and watched her carefully. Maya answered every question patiently, always emphasizing the story behind the plane. She explained how Sam had trusted it, how he had saved people below, and how the plane had returned him safely every time. People listened, and slowly, their respect replaced the earlier laughter. One afternoon, a young woman named Rena arrived. She worked at the local library and had heard about the plane from a friend. Rena brought a small book of photographs and articles from years past. She handed it to Maya carefully. "These are all about Sam," she said. "I thought you might want them." Maya opened the book. The photographs showed Sam in uniform, standing proudly beside the plane, smiling with a mix of confidence and gentleness. Some showed him with other pilots, working together, checking engines, and preparing for flights. Others captured moments in the air, the plane soaring with grace above fields and towns. Each picture told a story of dedication and courage. Maya felt a deep connection to the pilot she had never met. She realized that this project was not just about fixing a plane. It was about honoring someone who had given so much and had been forgotten. She shared the photographs with Omar and Leo. They all looked at them in silence, feeling the weight of the past and the importance of the present. As the plane's restoration progressed, Maya thought more about the final flight described in Sam's letters. She read the entries over and over, imagining the choices he had made, the fear he had felt, and the responsibility that had guided him. It became clear why people had misunderstood him. His courage had saved lives, yet no one had truly recognized it at the time. Maya felt determined to make sure the story was known. She wanted people to understand that heroism was not always loud or celebrated. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and patient, like the work she and Omar were doing now. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Maya climbed into the cockpit alone. The hangar was silent except for the soft sound of the wind outside. She ran her fingers over the controls, imagining Sam sitting in the seat, his hands steady, his eyes focused on the horizon. She spoke softly, almost as if talking to him. "I will make sure they know," she said. "I will make sure your story is heard." The next morning brought a new challenge. The engine made a small sound, a sharp click that had not been there before. Omar examined it carefully. He frowned, running his hands over the machinery. "This might take a full day to fix," he said. Maya nodded. She knew that repairing an old plane required patience and persistence. She rolled up her sleeves and joined him. Together, they disassembled the engine and examined every part. Hours passed, filled with careful movements, checks, and adjustments. Sweat dripped and their muscles ached, but they did not stop. By late afternoon, the engine hummed smoothly again. Maya and Omar exchanged a quiet smile. The plane was ready to move, to show its strength and the care that had gone into restoring it. Outside, the light of the setting sun reflected on its polished metal. It looked alive, proud, and ready. The next day, Maya invited a small group to see the progress. Leo came, of course, and Rena returned with more materials about Sam. Other locals, curious and respectful now, also arrived. Maya guided them around the plane, showing the repairs and telling the story. People listened with attention, their eyes wide as they realized how much effort had gone into every detail. They began to understand the connection between the pilot and the plane, between courage and care, between the past and the present. That afternoon, a young boy named Imran asked a question that made everyone pause. "Do you think it can fly again?" Maya smiled. She looked at the plane, shining in the sunlight, and nodded. "Yes," she said. "It can." The words felt powerful and true. The plane had survived years of neglect. It had been restored with skill, patience, and love. Now it was ready to honor the story it carried. Maya spent the evening preparing. She checked the instruments, cleaned the cockpit once more, and reviewed Sam's notes. She imagined the first flight she would take in the plane, not as a pilot seeking glory, but as someone carrying the memory of courage and trust. She knew the flight would not be easy. She knew it would require focus, calm, and respect for every detail. But she felt ready. As night fell, the hangar was quiet. The plane stood inside like a sleeping giant, ready to awaken. Maya looked at it and whispered softly, "Tomorrow, you will fly again. Tomorrow, the world will hear your story." The following morning, she arrived early. Omar joined her, as did Leo and a few others who had been helping. The plane was ready. They rolled it out of the hangar carefully. The sunlight glinted on its polished metal, and the air seemed to hold its breath. The people watching from a distance fell silent. The laughter from before had vanished. Only respect remained. Maya climbed into the cockpit. She adjusted her seat, fastened the straps, and ran her hands over the controls. She could feel the plane waiting beneath her, a quiet strength that mirrored Sam's own calm courage. She nodded to Omar and Leo. They both understood. This was the moment when the story and the plane would become one. She started the engine. The sound was steady and strong, filling the hangar and spilling into the field outside. It was not loud or harsh. It was confident and alive. People gasped. They had not expected such power from an old, rusty plane. Maya guided it forward, feeling every movement, every response. The plane rolled down the field, steady and true, lifting into the sky with a gentle, powerful grace. The crowd watched in awe. Some whispered names they remembered from the stories. Others only stared, realizing that the woman who had bought the old plane had given life to more than metal. She had brought back a story, a memory, and a piece of history that had been ignored for too long. Maya flew carefully, focusing on the sky and the plane. She imagined Sam beside her, approving, guiding, and trusting. She felt the wind on her face and the hum of the engine beneath her. The world below seemed smaller, quieter, respectful. She understood fully now why people had laughed before. They had not seen courage or history in a rusty old plane. They had only seen the surface. She saw deeper, and the plane rewarded that trust with a flight that would be remembered. As the sun set, painting the sky with orange and pink, Maya brought the plane back to the field. She landed carefully, and the plane touched the ground as if it had never left. The people cheered softly, quietly, with respect and awe. They had witnessed more than a flight. They had witnessed history being honored. Maya stepped out of the cockpit. She looked at the plane and whispered, "Thank you, Sam. Your story lives." The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving Maya, Omar, and Leo beside the restored plane. The air was filled with a sense of completion, of respect, and of quiet triumph. The plane had returned to the sky. The story had returned to the people. And Maya knew there would be more flights, more stories, and more memories carried forward because courage, care, and truth could never truly be forgotten. The next morning, the hangar felt different. Light poured through the large windows, reflecting off the polished metal of the plane. Maya arrived early, as always, her heart still filled with the memory of the first successful flight. Omar was already there, checking the instruments carefully. The plane stood ready, calm and strong. It seemed to wait patiently, as if aware that today would be special. Maya and Omar worked together, running through every checklist, making sure each system was functioning perfectly. She ran her hands over the controls again, imagining the pilot Sam, who had trusted this plane with his life. She felt a connection to him that went deeper than words, a bond created by respect and care. "Are you ready?" Omar asked quietly. Maya nodded. "I am," she said. She had planned a short flight first, to test the plane and feel its responses. She wanted to honor its history and ensure it was safe. As she climbed into the cockpit, Leo and Rena watched from the edge of the field. A few other townspeople had come, curious and respectful. They knew this flight was more than a test, it was a tribute to Sam and his story. The plane's engine roared softly as it started. The sound was strong and steady, like a heartbeat brought back to life. Maya guided the plane along the field. Its movements were smooth, confident. The wings lifted into the air with grace, and soon the plane was flying. The wind rushed past the cockpit, carrying the smell of grass and earth below. Maya felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. She imagined Sam smiling, feeling proud. From the ground, Leo raised his hand, waving. "You are doing well, Maya," he called. Maya smiled and focused on the flight. She followed the route Sam had often taken, circling above the town, the river, and the open fields. She noticed small details she had only read about in Sam's notes. The way the plane handled gentle turns, the subtle hum of the engine at higher altitudes, the perfect balance of the wings. It was as if the plane remembered him, responding to her with trust and ease. After a few minutes, Maya brought the plane in for a smooth landing. It touched the ground like a bird settling on the grass. She shut down the engine and climbed out of the cockpit. Her face was flushed, her eyes shining. The plane stood quietly, proud, and alive. The crowd approached slowly, quietly. They no longer laughed. They had watched a story return to the sky, and they felt it deeply. Some whispered words of admiration, while others simply nodded in respect. Even people who had doubted Maya at the auction now understood why she had chosen the rusty old plane. Rena stepped forward with a notebook in her hand. "I have more stories," she said. "I collected them from people who knew Sam. They will add to what you are doing here." Maya took the notebook and opened it carefully. The pages were filled with memories, small acts of kindness, moments of courage, flights saved from danger, and quiet conversations that showed the heart of a man who had been misunderstood. Maya read a few aloud to Omar and Leo. Each story brought new life to the pilot she had never met. She realized that Sam had touched more lives than anyone remembered. His plane had carried not just him, but the trust and hope of everyone who had flown with him or been saved by him. As days passed, Maya continued her work. She made small improvements, always with care, always with respect. Each flight was a reminder that the plane was not just a machine, but a carrier of stories, of courage, and of trust. People came to watch, asking questions, learning about Sam, and witnessing the careful work that made the plane ready for the sky again. One morning, a boy named Zane came with his father. Zane was small and timid, but his eyes shone with curiosity. He had read the stories of Sam in the newspaper. Maya knelt beside him and showed him the cockpit. She let him touch the controls and explained their function in simple words. Zane listened carefully, his face full of wonder. "I want to learn to fly someday," he said quietly. "You will," Maya replied. "But first, you must respect every story, every plane, and every moment in the sky." Zane nodded seriously, understanding the weight of her words more than he realized. His father smiled, grateful that Maya was teaching something beyond flying: respect, patience, and understanding. One afternoon, Leo brought another visitor. She was an older woman named Mira, a retired pilot who had known Sam during her own flying career. Her eyes were kind, but her voice carried the weight of time. "I heard you are flying Sam's plane again," Mira said softly. "I never thought anyone would honor him like this." Maya invited her to see the cockpit. Mira ran her hands over the controls, remembering Sam's touch, his focus, and the trust he had placed in the plane. She smiled, a quiet smile full of memory. "He would be proud," she said. "You are giving life back to more than metal. You are giving life back to a story." Maya felt the words deeply. She understood now that her work was not only about restoring a plane. It was about restoring respect, courage, and memory. She realized that Sam had never truly left the world. He had been waiting for someone who could see beyond the rust and age, someone who could understand the value of his story. As the days grew longer, Maya planned a special flight. She would take the plane on a longer journey, following the path Sam had flown during his career. She wanted to feel the sky as he had, to honor his choices and his courage. Omar helped her prepare, checking every system and ensuring the plane was perfect. Leo and Rena collected more stories and photographs to share, making sure the past would not be forgotten. Finally, the day arrived. The hangar was filled with people who had once doubted, laughed, or ignored the plane. Now, they were there to witness history. Maya climbed into the cockpit, her hands steady on the controls. She felt the plane beneath her, strong and alive, ready to honor the pilot it had carried for so many years. As the engine roared to life, Maya took a deep breath. The plane moved forward and lifted into the sky, smooth and graceful. People on the ground watched silently, their eyes following the flight, understanding the courage it represented. Maya circled above the town and the fields, feeling the wind on her face, imagining Sam guiding her with every turn. She felt a deep connection to the past and to the life that had been forgotten. When she landed again, the plane settled gently on the grass. The people cheered, softly at first, then with growing respect. Maya climbed out of the cockpit and looked at the plane. She whispered, "Your story is alive. You will never be forgotten." The crowd gathered around, and even those who had once laughed could no longer find words. They understood that what Maya had done was more than restore a plane. She had restored honor, courage, and memory. The rusty old plane was no longer just metal. It was a symbol of the pilot who had trusted it, of the woman who had believed in it, and of the people who were finally listening. The morning was bright and clear, with soft sunlight spreading over the airfield. Maya arrived early, her heart steady but filled with anticipation. Today was different. Today the plane would take a longer flight, one that followed the route Sam had flown during his career. The townspeople had gathered again, their curiosity and respect evident in quiet murmurs. Some had brought cameras, others notebooks. Everyone wanted to witness the moment when the story of Sam and his plane would finally feel complete. Omar was already at the hangar, checking the engine and instruments carefully. His hands moved confidently, as if he had done this 100 times, though he admitted it was special. "She is ready," he said, glancing at Maya. "Everything is perfect." Maya nodded. She ran her fingers over the controls, feeling the metal beneath her hands, imagining the decades of flights, the decisions made, and the courage it had carried. She climbed into the cockpit, fastening the straps with care. She looked out at the field, at the people waiting, and felt the weight of history, responsibility, and honor pressing gently on her shoulders. The engine came to life, humming smoothly, strong and steady. The sound filled the airfield and echoed through the nearby hills. Maya guided the plane forward, and it rolled down the field, smooth and confident. The wings lifted gracefully, and soon the plane was in the sky, soaring with freedom. The townspeople watched in awe, their eyes following the flight. The plane moved with elegance, responding perfectly to Maya's careful guidance, as if it remembered the hands that had flown it before. Maya followed Sam's old routes. She flew above the river that curved through the valley, above the fields that stretched wide, and above the town itself. She imagined Sam in the cockpit, calm, focused, and brave. She pictured him making the same choices he had once made, saving lives and protecting people below. Her heart swelled with admiration for a man she had never met, a man who had trusted a machine as deeply as he had trusted himself. Below, the townspeople remained silent, watching the plane glide through the sky. Their previous laughter had been replaced with respect. They could see courage in motion, not as a story in a book, but alive in the flight of the restored plane. Some whispered names they had read in the articles. Others simply nodded, understanding that history was present before them, unfolding in real time. Maya made a smooth circle and then continued to climb, testing the limits carefully. She felt the wind push against the wings, gentle and steady. She imagined Sam teaching her through every adjustment, guiding her decisions with the wisdom of experience. The plane responded perfectly, every control precise, every movement calm. She felt alive in a way she had never felt before. After a long flight, she began the descent back to the airfield. She adjusted the speed and altitude carefully, following everything Sam had written in his notes and letters. She landed gently, the plane touching the grass with grace and power. She shut down the engine and climbed out of the cockpit, her face glowing with satisfaction and emotion. The plane stood strong, alive, and proud. The crowd erupted in quiet cheers, some clapping, others nodding with respect. People who had doubted, laughed, or ignored the plane before now understood. Maya walked around the plane, touching it gently, speaking softly. "Your story is alive," she whispered. "You will never be forgotten." Leo stepped forward, his eyes filled with pride and memory. "Sam would be proud," he said. "Not just of the plane, but of you. You have given honor to his courage and care. You have shown what it means to respect history." Rena approached with her notebook, filled with stories and photographs. She handed it to Maya. "Now we can share all of this," she said. "Everyone can know what he did and who he was." Maya took the notebook carefully. She opened it and read aloud a story of Sam's courage. It was the story of a flight during a storm, when he had taken risks to protect people below. The plane had struggled, but he had guided it safely. The story spoke of trust, patience, and responsibility. The crowd listened quietly, moved by the words and the flight they had witnessed. That evening, Maya and Omar worked to prepare the plane for the next journey. Each repair, each adjustment was done with care. They cleaned it, polished it, and ensured that every instrument was perfect. The plane had returned to the sky once, but it would do so again, carrying not only Maya but the memory of Sam, his courage, and the trust between a pilot and a plane. As the sun set, casting warm colors across the airfield, Maya stood beside the plane. She looked up at the sky and felt a sense of completion. She had honored Sam, restored the plane, and shared the story with the town. The laughter had gone, replaced by respect and admiration. She realized that the journey was more than mechanical restoration. It was about trust, history, and the courage to honor what others had overlooked. That night, she wrote a letter of her own. She addressed it to Sam, even though he would never read it. She described the flights, the people, and the respect his story had earned. She told him that his courage had inspired her and many others. She thanked him for trusting his plane, for teaching her patience, care, and responsibility. Days turned into weeks, and the plane continued to fly. Maya shared the flights with other enthusiasts, teaching them the lessons of care and respect. She allowed young pilots to watch and learn. She showed them Sam's notes, photographs, and stories. She taught them that every machine, every person, every action carried a story worth respecting. The townspeople began to visit regularly, watching the plane soar across the sky. They no longer saw a rusty old machine. They saw history, courage, and life. People came from nearby towns to witness it and to hear the stories Maya shared. The hangar became a place of learning, memory, and respect. Maya never forgot the first moment she saw the plane. She remembered the laughter, the doubt, and the silence that followed. She understood that true courage was often quiet and unnoticed until someone chose to see it. She understood that stories could be restored, memories honored, and lives remembered. One evening, as the plane rested inside the hangar, Maya placed her hand on the metal. She whispered, "Thank you, Sam. You trusted this plane, and now the world knows your story." Omar and Leo stood beside her, sharing her quiet pride. The plane had returned to the sky, the story had returned to the people, and the courage that had been forgotten had been remembered.